JB Chemicals and Pharmaceuticals. I welcome all the doctors who are attending this webcast, and especially I welcome today's speakers who are renowned names in their field of practice. Today we are fortunate to have Dr. B.C. Kalmat and Dr. Rishi Deshpande. Both will be speaking on two different topics. The flow of our program would be we'll be starting with Dr. B.C. Kalmat. He will be speaking on the definitive ARB Azilsartan for 20 minutes. Followed by him, Dr. Rishi Deshpande will be speaking on expect more from CCBs, that is Cilnidipine. And then we'll be having 10 minutes time for question and answers if there are any from the audience. So let me start with some introduction. I welcome today's first speaker, Dr. B.C. Welcome. Dr. B.C. Kalmat is a well-known name who is currently an associate honorary cardiologist at Bombay Hospital in Mumbai, where he has been working since 1999, and he is also serving as an assistant professor at cardiology at Bombay Hospital. Also, in addition to his consultation, he is a consultant at Jupiter Hospital, Thane. In his present positions as an interventional cardiologist, Dr. Kalmat performs complex procedures including angioplasty, stenting, balloon valvectomy, permanent pacemaker installation, and other catheter-based treatments of heart diseases. He has performed more than 3,500 angioplasties and 12,000 coronary angiograms. So I welcome Dr. B.C. Kalmat and
thank you.
Yeah, sir, we can have the session from you now.
Thank you, Nitin. A very warm welcome and a very beautiful and eloquent introduction of mine. Thank you. Now I'm an associate professor at Bombay Hospital. I moved on from assistant professor, must be old CV. Thank you. And secondly, once in a lifetime of all the intervention, there comes a great momentum in every field, maybe angioplasty, maybe cataract, maybe kidney disease, like that. We had a drug-eluting stent in 2002, which completely changed the game plan of whole intervention therapy or the management of coronary blocks. Like earlier, we used to say when you put a metallic stent, you say that this is temporary and you will go for bypass surgery later. So with that, like what you see a monumental change is that among the ARBs, there came a very important ARB a few years ago. Of course, we had losartan, valsartan, telmisartan, and olmesartan, and then came the great azilsartan. We had CCBs, that is calcium channel blockers, for a long time, but the azilsartan was a great game changer in the management of hypertension therapy, a real new frontier, my dear friends. I would say that because like when you had laser surgery for cataract or intraocular lens, like that, it is a monumental therapy which came into therapy of hypertension, which made hypertension therapy very simple. Why? Hypertension affects almost 40% of individuals in this industrialized population and also forms an additional risk factor of almost 70 to 80% in the other patients who are comorbidly having diabetes, ischemic heart disease, stroke. So treating and regressing to blood pressure is very important. So at the outset, we should know what is an ideal drug for hypertension. There are many guidelines that come. The recent is about 2020 International Society of Hypertension. What is that? The drug should be evidence-based in relation to morbid mortality, the prevention of that. Ideally, it is a single dose. Nobody wants to take a 2 to 3 dose of hypertension. You all know that patients will just forget and throw away the tablet. So single dose, affordable, cost-effective, and most important, well-tolerated with all the benefits, it should be an ideal drug. I think azilsartan may be reaching to that level in most of the grade 1 and grade 2 hypertension therapy. Maybe in grade 3, we need a combination therapy. In nutshell, I could tell you. because our new definition is high normal is 130 to 139 and diastolic of 80 to 80, 85 to 89, whereas grade 1 140 to 159, grade 2 160 to 179, and above 180 grade 3 makes a very simple thing. Like the therapy of diabetes, everybody has to have lifestyle and metformin. Here everybody has to have lifestyle first of exercise, reduction of salt, yoga, relaxation. After that, you have to have a great therapy for people who above 140 will require therapy for hypertension in spite of doing lifestyle and other things, as you all know. The aim is to control the blood pressure within the first 3 months of therapy. So what we see is the principle of blood pressure management in the who are in the target range. You all know the thumb rule that hardly 12 to 15% of the patients in India are in the optimal range of blood pressure, because half of them do not know they have hypertension, another half are treated, and another half are adequately treated. So you can 12 to 15% of the patients are really adequately treated with systolic blood pressure less than 140 and diastolic below 85. This is the real truth of therapy of hypertension in India. So what should be a ideal drug or to treat in what is optimal is that we have now said that below 65 years we need to treat them more aggressively, and above 65 we can be little relaxed of 140 and 90, and that's why the drug therapy threshold is one thing which we look at whether the patient is achieving that or not. So when you looked at these summaries, so ARB or ACE inhibitory with the calcium channel blocker is the fantastic combination, which is the hallmark of all therapies. If you look at anybody's hypertension prescription, 95% will either have a ARB or ACE inhibitor with the CCB, and sometimes with the, of course, a diuretic like a chlorthalidone or spironolactone. This makes almost 90-95% therapies. Only in special resistant and other hypertension we add centrally acting drugs or sometimes beta blockers or sometimes other therapies. So single pill combination like a ARB and a calcium channel is ideal for many reasons, which I'll show you in the later slides. I'm not going to go into step 1, step 2. Earlier used to step 1, step 2, step 3. Now anybody grade 2 hypertension, you go to a combination pill directly. Only youngsters or very old people or stage 1 hypertension, you can start monotherapy. And among the monotherapy, you can imagine this is a fantastic drug because of many reasons which are involved, because this gives great control of hypertension in the population of patients who come with either grade 1 or grade 2 hypertension. So core drug therapy strategy for uncomplicated hypertension would be to either combine a ARB ACB with a calcium channel blocker or a diuretic sometimes. If there is a compelling indication of little edema or little volume overload, then you add a ARB with a diuretic. Or when there is a pedal edema, and in fact the funny part of the calcium channel blocker pedal edema can be reduced by ARB, which we always happen to see that. And in the step 2, you can step up the full dose of the ARB and calcium blocker and diuretic. And only when you call resistant hypertension, in resistant hypertension you can add spironolactone. And even when there are 3 drugs, one of the drug being spironolactone, if it is not well controlled, we call it as refractory hypertension, which is itself a huge therapy to treat, a huge challenge for me as a cardiologist and my colleague Dr. Deshpande as a nephrologist. You see here the beautiful synergy of action. If you see here, the CCB is an arteriodilator. It can give peripheral edema. It is not effective in low renin and not high renin patients, and reduce cardiac ischemia like amlodipine. Whereas ARB is a RAS blockade and important for a CHP, cardiac heart failure patients, and renal benefits. So if you combine, the negative effects of CCB are the positive effects of ARB, like it attenuates peripheral edema, it causes venodilation, whereas arteriodilation is seen here, and it's effective in high renin patients in these patients, and then no effect on cardiac ischemia here. So this combination of a CCB like an amlodipine or or a cilnidipine especially is now important, because the fact that cilnidipine has got a great role. My friend will talk to you, Dr. Rishi, where many benefits of cilnidipine you can see over amlodipine. So this combination of a CCB with an ARB will virtually treat the arteriovenous dilatation, peripheral edema, being effective in high and low renin patients, level patients, because one of the classical theories of hypertension is either a high renin or a low renin. So this combination drug will have both the benefits of both the world, and also reduce the RAS failure. Doesn't mean that everybody has to come with pedal edema and increase JVP. No, the heart failure can manifest very subtly, like a diastolic heart failure, which you used to call like HEPREF. The HEPF, that is heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, is the very common occurrence with hypertension patients who are uncontrolled. Then the addition of azilsartan with cilnidipine or any great combination of these two drugs will make you therapy very, very simple. So, my dear friends, the FDA says it is a decrease in the BP rather than any other property of the antihypertensive drug that is largely responsible for their cardiovascular benefits of reduction of ischemia, stroke, and myocardial infarction. Greater the antihypertensive effects of azilsartan serve justify clinical interest in this recently approved ARB to relative other molecules in this class, which have little lower capacity to reduce BP, like losartan, telmisartan, and other sartans. This is a very powerful drug compared to other sartans, and very, very highly bound to the plasma proteins, and makes the therapy. Why azilsartan is important? It's such a powerful medicine. It's a very tight binding to the AT1 receptors, prolonged efficacy, almost 18 to 24 hours half-life, and also additional mechanisms like it enhances the Ang1 to 7 vasodilatory action, which are found in the pathways of the renin-angiotensin mechanism, and postulate also effective in reducing, enhancing the renal sodium excretion to some extent, makes this drug wonderful drug for reducing the blood pressure. When it is compared with valsartan or another CCB, you could see there was a huge change in the, when you were 6 weeks and for 8 weeks and 24 weeks, there was more than 16 milligram change in systolic blood pressure, almost compared to 320 milligrams of valsartan. Diavon is a very powerful drug. So that tells what about this drug, valsartan and the benedapine. And that's why even it was compared as a monotherapy with olmesartan. If you all know olmesartan, it came, we were very excited, very powerful drug. But it also, when it went to stage 2 or stage 3 hypertension, then olmesartan alone could not be effective. We often combine with amlodipine and hydrochlorothiazide or chlorthalidone. Here in azilsartan alone could control 60% of the patient's hypertension monotherapy, whereas 50 with olmesartan and 30 with telmisartan. Telmisartan is a weak drug. That's why the best sartan in the BP lowering drug, either systolic or diastolic, to a tune of a difference of 2.6 to 2 point, is a mean drop of blood pressure, is very important. The best efficacy of this on the clinic 24 blood pressure seen comparing ramipril, valsartan, candesartan, and olmesartan, it was definitely more powerful and more effective. Even in patients who are hemodialyzing, some of the drugs cannot be useful here. Switching from olmesartan to azilsartan significantly safely decreases the home measured blood pressure in hemodialysis patients. Hence, it also did not affect the serum potassium levels, and also may reduce cardiac mortality by reducing blood pressure, and many other aspects of azilsartan, which are very, very interesting. So, if you compare the in vitro binding capacities, it is the half-life you can see, but the AT1 receptor molecule binding is more potent, and compared to any other molecule, it sometimes 50 to 60 times more. That's why when you see azilsartan offers additional systolic blood pressure reduction over other ARBs, and it provides an average of 4 to 8 milligrams of further 24-hour systolic blood reduction over other ARBs compared to olmesartan, valsartan, and even AC, that is AC inhibitor like ramipril, which was even endorsed by American Heart Association, is a very, very interesting thing, because such a wonderful drug, when azilsartan is associated with increased circulating the angiotensin 1 to 7 levels and reduced renovascular 20 HET levels, which was a lovely original article which came in the Hypertension, and the concluding says that this is an important molecule which not only reduce the blood pressure to a greater extent, it treatment with azilsartan completely antagonized the elevation of BP induced by the ANG2, prevented cardiac hypertrophy, attenuated renal damage, and increased the ANG levels, and while diminishing the 20 HT levels, and also important in cardiac apoptosis, which is important part of the hypertension therapy with this molecule. So my dear friends, apart from the urine albumin creatinine reduction, which is important parameter for all the sartans, of course, azilsartan decrease the blood pressure, the urinary albumin creatinine ratios, and the urinary AZTL more than the other ARBs is very important. Why? Because as you see, my friend will tell you that the key marker for renal dysfunction starts with the microalbuminuria, and like in a diabetic or hypertensive. And this famous study in Journal of Clinical Hypertension done by Dr. Bakris, treatment of hypertension CKD patients with azilsartan and chlorothalidone versus olmesartan hydrochlorothiazide, was saying the study concluded that one of the highest CV risk cohorts, that is older patients with CKD, you can imagine very old patients, CKD patients, azilsartan with chlorothalidone achieve blood pressure targets is safe and requires less dose titration and fewer additional antihypertensive medications to achieve BP target compared. This, of course, my colleague will speak. I'm not going to tell you too much about this. Single center evaluation of the single dose pharmacologic of this angiotensin 2 receptor blocker like azilsartan, medoxaval in renal impairment patients was very, very important to see that. So if you see, compare the systolic and diastolic blood pressures across, or the only amlodipine with placebo and azilsartan with amlodipine, it is definitely very, very heartening to see that there is more than 12 to 16% or almost 7 to 8 milligrams drop is there in both systolic, and about 5 to 6 in diastolic is a very important thing. We cannot, this is a over the masses, we can say. So whether triple versus dual combination lowering systolic was also compared here. Amlodipine with hydrochlorothiazide, olmesartan with hydrochlorothiazide, and olmesartan with amlodipine, and olmesartan with amlodipine. As I told you, we have this triple combination. So in this also, the relative risk reduction, mean change of blood pressure was very, very good with azilsartan of dose of 80 with. That's why, my dear friends, if you see that the mean change is important at that. Hence, azilsartan medoxamal, the most powerful ARB, and why it's important is used in the United States also continues to grow due to superior efficacy and simple dosing, single pill combination with chlorothalidone, excellent tolerability and patient acceptance. Only thing, I mean, we are a little scared to start in stage 1 and stage 2 hypertension because whether the blood pressure drop too much. No, stage 2 we can easily start monotherapy, and many a times monotherapy is enough for these patients with azilsartan, and that makes the control very, very fantastic. And I think azilsartan, a new angiotensin receptor blocker, has superior ambulatory and clinical BP lowering compared to the olmesartan, valsartan, and other sartans, and clinically used dosage is well tolerated in patients in these patients of 40 and 80 milligrams. BP control and response rate for this drug at its highest dose are greater than other drugs in the same class by absolute rates of 8 to 10%. And azilsartan may be useful treatment option to enhance blood pressure lowering for patients in whom dual anti-therapy with a generic AC or ARB plus either a calcium channel blocker or a diuretic has not reduced the blood pressure to the desired level before trying triple therapy. What we mean is, instead of jumping to olmi with calcium with a diuretic, which can be sometimes cause postural hypertension or electrolyte imbalance, you can definitely try azilsartan with a calcium channel blocker, which is very, very meaningful and interesting. I think with that, I will end my talk here, and I will take on the questions as they come up. Yes,
Sure.
Nitin?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. B.C. Kalmat, for such a lucid and subtle presentation. We will be taking question and answers at the latter stage. So, sir, you will have to wait. Please
Yeah,
cooperate.
sure.
Yeah. Now, I welcome our second speaker of today, Dr. Rishi Deshpande. He will be speaking on expect more from CCBs, that is Cilnidipine. Before handing over this session to Dr. Deshpande, I would just like to briefly introduce him. Dr. Rishi Deshpande is currently working as Director of Nephrology Academics at Jaslok Hospital and Research Center, and he is a Senior Consultant Nephrologist at Sir H.N. Reliance Hospital, Sepi Hospital, Mumbai. He is a gold medalist in DNB nephrology and was facilitated by late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, ex-President of India. He is also offering honorary services to Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai from last 11 years. He has been awarded as Times Healthcare Award in 2019 and 20 and has been voted by peers as one of the top nephrologists in Mumbai by Outlook and India Today magazine. He has several research papers and publications to his credit. He is a DNB nephrology teacher also, and he has trained several students in nephrology over the last few years. His areas of expertise include kidney transplant across blood group barrier, sensitized recipients, and elder donor transplant. He is also a leader in critical care nephrology and has also helped develop onconephrology in our country. So without wasting much time, Dr. Rishi Deshpande, you please start your session.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Nitin, for a very kind introduction. Nitin, if you could just help me with the slides, please.
Sure.
Yeah, so we could start. Sure. So the talk of the day is to expect more from the CCBs and particularly focusing on Cilnidipine. Next slide, please. So, whenever it comes to hypertension and the kidney, I always explain to the patient or to my doctors as chicken and the egg. Which came first? Is it the kidney injury that came first and presented as hypertension, or is it the hypertension that was uncontrolled and led to kidney injury? We may never know, but looks like, when I was a student, the percentage of secondary hypertension emanating from renal causes was attributed around 5 to 7%, maybe less than 10%. Today, you see it has increased, and the secondary hypertension is that percentage of secondary hypertension in overall causes of hypertension is definitely expanding as our knowledge of pathophysiology and biology of hypertension improves. So I believe that the secondary hypertension part will increase with time as we learn more about this disease. What we know is that if we control blood pressure to the target set, we are able to avoid end organ damage, and that works for us. So between the hypertension and the kidney, if you have hypertension, you lead to uncontrolled, it will lead to kidney injury, initially manifesting as microalbuminuria. And for the new people who are a bit not into it, microalbumin is not another form of albumin, or it is just the quantity which is micro and nothing else about that, right? And over a longer period of time, hypertension injury will lead to fall in GFR and decrease kidney size. Next, please. Nitin? Yeah, so this is showing you the crosstalk between the kidney and the heart, and cardiorenal syndrome may be a topic for some other day. But basically what it shows you here is that as the chronic kidney disease progresses through different stages, CKD from stage 1 to stage 5, it leads to worsening hypertension, initially because of hemodynamic alterations in the kidney and later because of structural alterations. Ultimately leads to worsening hypertension, which leads to injury to the heart, right? Sure. So we can call it a cause, a consequence, and a symptom of chronic kidney disease. Next, please. How should you treat? So this is like excellent hexagon out there in a 3-dimension, which is showing you, multiple drugs that are commonly used in clinical practice to control hypertension. And the guidelines, the European Society of Hypertension guidelines say that the choice of drugs to employ should not be guided by age alone. However, specific clinical conditions like, angina pectoris, previous MI, use of beta blockers in these very old hypertensive individuals does remain controversial. So these are the common drugs, the CCBs, the ACE inhibitors, the ARBs, the thiazide, Dr. Kalmatis has already alluded to. But we should also remember our alpha and beta blockers, which have been time tested for and been with us for a long time. So, the choice of drug always remains important based on individual patient parameters. So, if you have a pregnant female, you will not want to use a diuretic or a ACE or ARB for sure, right? So similarly, different indications will require different drugs to control BP. Next, please. Yeah, so these are the different combinations in common clinical practice. You can have a renin-angiotensin receptor blocker with a calcium antagonist, and that is a very potent combination. If to this you add a third drug like a small dose of a diuretic, even difficult to manage hypertensions are usually well controlled, and this is like a single dose and very effective combination to go with. Other combinations would be an ARB or an ACE inhibitor with a diuretic alone. That you would use, for milder forms of, for milder hypertension where you don't need a CCB, or in patients who have some problems with CCBs. ACE inhibitors or ARBs or direct renin inhibitors, I mean, to me, they are all the same unless a patient is particularly not taking to a particular drug. Like an ACE inhibitor will have more cough than an ARB and things like that. But they would all serve our purpose of RAS blockade. Next, please. So if you look at different guidelines, this is the European Society of Hypertension, and it talks about different organs and different. The CCB comes out as a winner across different, like whether it's a pregnancy, whether it is a diabetic patient, whether the patient has a metabolic syndrome, isolated hypertension, cardiac problems, strokes. I'm sorry, is there some crosstalk? Yeah. So, at different indications, CCB is a clear winner. ACE, ARBs can be used in most of the indications except obviously pregnancy and isolated hypertension. Diuretics you should be careful about where we would use it. It has particular place in patients like, difficult to control hypertension, the African Americans, isolated hypertension, patients with heart failure, and patients with previous stroke. The beta blockers, particularly in cardiac indications, like Dr. Kalmat would allude better to that than me, and in others like pregnancy where it is safe to use a beta blocker. Next slide, please. So what we were trying to say is that there are different classes of antihypertensive agents. The main classes are thiazide diuretics, calcium antagonists, ACE inhibitors, ARBs, they're taken separately here, and beta blockers. And whether it is about initiation of treatment or about maintenance of treatment. Either it is alone or in combination, but most of the regimens will use these drugs to control the pressures. And with hypertension, this is applicable, that BP lowering, whichever way we achieve it, ultimately, if you are able to lower the BP, the benefits of antihypertensive therapy will be visible. Okay. Sorry, the last, yeah. Beta blockers, particularly in combination with thiazide diuretic, should not be used in metabolic syndrome or those at high risk of incident diabetes. That's a something for us to remember. Next, please. So cardiovascular protection and CCBs. In hypertension patients with or without CKD, calcium channel blockers are excellent antihypertensive drugs. If there is microalbuminuria or proteinuria, then using an ACE or ARB is more important, but that does not impede the consideration of a CCB as part of a combination of agents that will be required by most, if not all, patients. This is very important in clinical practice. If you see a patient of hypertension with microalbuminuria, then it is important that this patient is started on an ACE or an ARB, either as a single drug or in combination. I can tell you with our experience that patients with whether it is a renovascular, renal parenchymal hypertension, or just a hypertension with renal injury, they will require more than 2 or 3 agents to control blood pressure. And one of them should be a CCB because these are powerful drugs. They control BP properly. So in the absence of albuminuria, a CCB can be contemplated as a first step therapy as it seems to preserve the GFR in adequate manner. In the presence of a diminished GFR without albuminuria, a CCB can be used as a first step therapy, but combination therapy and the addition of an ACE inhibitor or ARB is adequate. Next, please. Yeah. So next, please. We'll go to the next. Yeah. So what about calcium channel blocker in hypertension? Now we said that it is very important to achieve blood pressure control. Very good. You have done that. Now, is it something more than just BP reduction that you should be aiming for? Next, please. So these are the different classes of the calcium channel blockers. So dihydropyridine, which is the most common class of agents we use. The first generation in that is nifedipine and nicarnidipine. Second generation is benidipine and ifosfamide, which we are seeing in practice now. Third generation amlodipine, which has been around for a long time, and now azilnidipine. And the fourth generation is cilnidipine, lecarnidipine and lacidipine. So the calcium channel blocker cilnidipine belongs to a recent generation. And the other things, other drugs which we do use a lot in practice are diltiazem and verapamil, but they are basically not very potent CCBs by themselves, but they are important in patients, because they have a negative chronotropic effect. So they have their own place in practice. So the vasodilatory potential of the CCB, it varies according to the subclass, whether it is a dihydropyridine or another group like a phenylalkylamine or a benzodiazepines. So based on that, the vasodilatory potency of a CCB will be different. So if you see across classes here, amlodipine, nifedipine, we all know in clinical practice, these are very potent drugs. But at the same time, we have issues like peripheral edema, which crops up with a lot of these drugs. And also from a nephrology perspective, whether hyperfiltration injury because of these drugs leads to proteinuria is very important. Next, please. So what are the problems with the conventional CCB? Reflex tachycardia, more incidence of pedal edema, and an elevated proteinuria level. So it's not just the heart, but also the kidney that we should take care of, correct? Next, please. So this is showing you cilnidipine. And what is different about cilnidipine is it's looking at both the N-type as well as the L-type calcium channel. Now, why is it important? Is because there's some balancing that comes in when you have a dual mode of action, the L as well as the N channel. So the N channel is at the presynaptic junction and the L channel is at the calcium receptor, right? So the vasodilatory effect of a pure L type, so nifedipine, amlodipine is like a pure L type, whereas cilnidipine is a mixed L as well as N. Now what does the N contribute to? Because of the N, you are able to maintain better renal blood flow when you are using a CCB like a cilnidipine, because of the N type of effect, because it is acting on both alpha-1 as well as beta-1 adrenoreceptor at the alpha-1 adrenoreceptors in the kidney. That is where it is going to work. Next, please. Yeah. So, cilnidipine about morning hypertension. So cilnidipine, particularly in this study that was shown in American Society of Hypertension 2011, showed that it has a greater effect on the morning hypertension without causing significant leg edema when it is administered at bedtime. So why would it have less of leg edema, or why would it have better control? Is because it has a sympatho-inhibitory action. What I was talking about, the presynaptic action of these drugs and the resulting balanced vasodilatation of arteries and the veins. Now this is a very important word. When you require blood pressure control, you require vasodilatation. But if it is balanced in some way, then you are going to avoid the side effects that you are seeing with the first or third generation of CCBs. Next, please. Is it effective? Yes, it is. This is data that shows that it is, as effective as amlodipine, because that is our clinical practice. Most of us use amlodipine or nifedipine when we need an immediate effect. But cilnidipine also works when it's used in the proper dose, and this is showing an that is equally efficacious as amlodipine for control of essential hypertension. Next, please. Now, this was mentioned in the previous slide that because the side effects of the conventional calcium channel blockers include primarily three. One of them was reflex tachycardia. The other two were pedal edema, right? So here, because you are having an N-type blockade, the reflex tachycardia is not as obvious as is seen with other CCBs. Next, please. So what about combinations? So cilnidipine, where you can add two ARBs and it will reduce the proteinuria further over and above what has been reduced by ARB in patients with hypertension and CKD, right? So this is an this is about a study from, I think, Punjab, Amritsar, which had like 120 patients comparing amlodipine and cilnidipine, which actually concluded that cilnidipine is offering greater reduction of BP and prevention of ankle edema in hypertension patients. This is the conclusion from this particular study. Next, please. What about combination therapy? So this is a Korean study that looks at patients who are on a RAS blockade. They are added either cilnidipine or amlodipine, and they are looking at efficacy as well as urinary albumin creat ratio. Next, please. So in addition to showing an efficacy, the albuminuria was significantly reduced in the cilnidipine group as compared to amlodipine, which we know, but this clearly did not show that effect, right? Sure. Next. Yeah. So why is it that the cilnidipine is renoprotective? So we know that this is a bit of physiology, but it's important for us to understand. So the L-type calcium channel blockers are predominantly, they are present on afferent arterioles. So when you inhibit these channels, what is going to happen in the afferent arteriole? It's going to dilate, or it's going to lead to an elevation in the glomerular pressure. Now, if you're only using something that is dilating the afferent arteriole, which afferent means bringing blood inside or into the glomerulus. If you're dilating it, you're increasing the glomerular pressure and it will lead to hyperfiltration injury, correct? Whereas if you also have a drug which is blocking the N-type, now where are they located? They are located in the sympathetic nerve endings. So it will control both the afferent as well as the efferent. So there's now a well-balanced dilatation of both arterioles. So like I said, the word balance is very important. You do need the afferent arteriole to dilate, but you also, if you have a balanced dilatation at the efferent end, then your glomerular hyperfiltration injury will be reduced. And consequently, there is also a secretion of renin from the periglomerular cells is also reduced because of this. So it leads to renoprotection. Next, please. So this is just showing you in a picture form what I have just told you, that instead of dilating only the afferent, cilnidipine also dilates the efferent. So there's a balanced dilatation, which leads not just to reduction in the it leads to reduction in the intraglomerular hypertension, and because of which the hyperfiltration injury in the kidney will be decreased. Next, please. So what are the highlights of this talk so far? Cilnidipine is inhibiting both L and N-type calcium channel blockers and not just the L like the traditional CCBs. Cilnidipine is as effective as traditional CCBs for BP reduction, but the advantages would be, so the same thing again, pedal edema, reflex tachycardia, proteinuria. If you have improvement in these three, that's very good. And they also claim that there may be a possibly better improvement in cardiac function and uric acid levels. That we'll see how it pans out. Next, please. Yeah. So what is it that you're looking for in the newer antihypertensives? You want something that is going to work not immediately, but the effect should start gradually and prolonged effect over a 24-hour period, so that once daily dose is required, you are able to avoid the reflex tachycardia, and it should be metabolically neutral, meaning that it should not be like beta blockade and diabetes. You don't want that kind of effect when you want only hypertension control, right? And ideally, if there are some pleiotropic effects like it, anti-inflammatory or antioxidant, they would be an add-on. Next, please. So this is a slide that Dr. Kalmat showed in his presentation. And when he said, a combination of a CCB along with an angiotensin receptor blockade. Now, ARBs are a hallmark of renal protection. That we all agree, right? We love them for the anti-proteinuric effect. We also love them for what they do in the brain and the heart. But when you combine the two together, our aim is to achieve a synergistic BP reduction, and they should have complementary clinical benefits. What do we mean by that? that if you are going to have, a low renin hypertension, then the CCB is going to be more effective. In high renin hypertension, the ARB is going to be more effective. So a combination will take care of either kind of clinical scenario, right? Now, there are advantages of CCB in, say, things like angina, where an ARB has no role. Whereas the peripheral edema that is caused by the CCB, that might get reduced because of the natriuresis caused by the angiotensin receptor blocker. So these are things, which you're looking at, cross benefits when you're combining a drug together. So you want something more than what a single drug can achieve. In addition to BP control, which is the most important parameter, what else can it do for you? So if it can reduce the edema, if it can reduce the proteinuria, when used in combination, then they are more welcome, right? Next, please. So this is showing you a combination of a CCB with an azilsartan. So this is cilnidipine, the newer generation CCB, along with a angiotensin receptor blocker with a long half-life, what Kalmat spoke to us about, right? Now, BP lowering is the primary effect which is desired from both of them, which is done. What else in addition to this? So when you look at the two drugs together, you get an additional effect in renoprotection, whereby you have a reduced renin secretion, a decrease in the renal hyperfiltration injury by reducing the intraglomerular hypertension, right? And because of the N-type calcium channel blocker effects, you will have less of the reflex tachycardia of the CCB, as well as not much of tachycardia, as well as reduced renal vasoconstriction, correct? So this will have an add-on effect to an ARB, which you are using for renal protection. So this is a synergism that we are talking about. Next, please. So this is the Indian data of azilsartan and cilnidipine with an ambulatory blood pressure based trial. So next, please. So this was to look at azilsartan 40 with a cilnidipine 5 or 10 milligrams in whereas monotherapy with these drugs in stage 2 hypertension. So they had a significant good number of patients, 228 patients, stage 2 hypertension. So pressures of more than 160 but less than 180 systolic, and diastolic of between 100 and 110, age group 18 to 65, 3 months follow-up, once a day dose. So a fixed dose combination of azilsartan 40 with cilnidipine 10 produced statistically significant reductions in the seated SBP, diastolic blood pressure, as well as the 24-hour ambulatory pressures for both systolic and diastolic when compared with monotherapy in stage 2 hypertension. So that is again the primary endpoint, which is BP control. Next, please. So this is showing you graphically how the BP control was achieved, with this particular combination. Next, please. Okay. So look at this red. After addition of cilnidipine, what has happened, right? So at all points after adding cilnidipine, you got a synergistic effect and a further lowering of pressure, whether it was systolic or diastolic, right? And it was also statistically significant, which is very important. Yes, next, please. So patients achieved blood pressure goals at high rate after addition of cilnidipine to ARB monotherapy, and at different age, the subgroup of these 228 patients that they looked at. So above 65 years, when they looked, the effect was even more pronounced, and a much larger proportion, like almost close to 50% of the patients were able to achieve blood pressure goals. Less than 65, with monotherapy, because the goal year was 130/85, around 20% of the patients reached it, and in high risk patients around 22%. So I mean, all of you who have followed hypertension trials know that achieving statistically significant benefit in a hypertension trial is not easy. The PRINT trial had its issues with such a large patient base. So I'm quite pretty impressed that between 228 patients, they were able to show statistically significant benefit to achieving BP control. So around 31% of the patients were able to attain the blood pressure that was desired, which is very good for a monotherapy. Next, please. Azilsartan, after Dr. Kalman has already spoken about. What is important here is that it's once a day therapy. It is more effective than the ARBs, olmesartan and valsartan. But that is, comparing for doses. So if you use higher amount of the other drugs, that effect, I'm not sure whether it's going to pan out. But what is important is once a day therapy, it's effective What was more impressive about azilsartan is that it could be compared head-on with a CCB like amlodipine for achieving BP control. So it's a potent drug. That is what I like about this particular azilsartan. It's potent. It works as a monotherapy in stage 1 hypertension. In combination with a calcium channel blocker, it's effective at lowering the status. The ARB with the clothalidone combination, again, isolated systolic hypertension, it's very effective. It's also ideal in salt-sensitive hypertension. Next, please. With cilnidipine, we have already discussed everything. The N type is what we have to remember here, because that is what is controlled. Proteinuria, which is a side effect of CCBs, which is not seen or actually improvement in the proteinuria with this particular class of CCB. Next, please. Nitin? Yeah, I think that's the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for all the attention.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for a wonderful and lucid presentation. I request attendees, if they have any questions, they can unmute themselves and ask to both the doctors directly, or they can put it in the chat box and I'll read out for them. I mean, either way. So we have just 5-7 minutes question answer session, and then we can wrap up the today's session.
Hello.
We are happy to take any questions, comments, criticism. Everything is welcome.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. So regarding
Nitin, you want to close the presentation, the slideshow?
Yes,
Nitin?
sure. I'll do it.
So you can see.
Can I go?
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
yes.
Yeah, lovely. Great. Thanks.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can I ahead? Yeah.
Yes, sir, please.
Regarding the CCB of amlodipine and cilnidipine, which have the longest half-life, and what benefit of the on ischemic heart disease, like which have the better effect on the ischemic heart disease?
Karmat, you want to-
Amlodipine or cilnidipine? Yeah.
Longest half-life is, of course, in CCB it is amlodipine, and
Yes, yes.
and more trials are done for cardiac protection amlodipine. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
Doubt about that. So if you want more cardiac protection, it has to be azilsartan with amlodipine.
Yeah.
And if you want less pedal edema, less reflex tachycardia, as Dr. Rishi told, then cilnidipine is a good choice, because many of the patients do come confused whether they gone into heart failure with pedal edema or is amlodipine related.
That right, sir.
So that's why amlodipine has a huge volume of cardiac benefit effects, and
Yes.
whereas cilnidipine studies are very less.
As a renoprotective, right?
As a renoprotective, of course, cilnidipine is more effective.
Yeah.
Rishi,
you,
you want
sir.
to add something?
No, thanks,
no,
sir.
I think if you have a patient with angina, I think definitely amlodipine is more anti-anginal than cilnidipine. Yes, Kalmat?
Absolutely, there's no doubt about that.
Exactly. Whereas if you have a patient with a metabolic syndrome with stage 2 hypertension and microalbuminuria, then you would want to use cilnidipine instead of amlodipine in that kind of a scenario, along with azilsartan.
Hypertension with angina, we always have beta blocker, so amlodipine can be added to negate the. I mean, there's already a beta blocker which is negating much of the tachycardia here.
Thank you.
Dr. Tiwari, I think it's a good thing. Yeah, Prakash.
Yeah.
Sir, how much maximum BP control can be achieved with this combination in double? How much? 20, 30 systolic?
Well, it is individualistic actually, and of course, if we combine, definitely 20 to 30 milligrams of systolic drop are seen in patients, and very few patients, I would say, will not respond to a combination of azilsartan and cilnidipine or amlodipine and hydrochlorothiazide. It's a very powerful combination. So maybe 5 to 10% will not respond, in a sense that when you say drop of 20 or more systolic is a good response.
Yeah. Okay.
In this particular data that we showed, it was shown that the reduction in the SBP and the diastolic was actually more in the group which is stage 2 and above for hypertension control, whereas patients who are So who need it more, they get more drop in the pressure. And actually, I would add a small reminder here that if you have a patient who is not getting control with triple therapy, like Dr. Kalmat just said, then you might really want to find out what is the reason for the refractory hypertension. It might be something that you need to look at. Maybe the patient has a renal artery disease or something, that patient is on a simultaneous drug like an NSAID or something he's taking. Why is he not responding? So let's remember our basic things, for control of hypertension. Whenever somebody has a refractory or a resistant hypertension, we need to go back to the basics. Make sure we tick our boxes. Make sure that the patient is not taking some drugs. Some patients could just be taking a nasal decongestant. That might be pushing up his pressures. So we need to make sure that we have taken care of all that. And if the patient is still not controlled, then we can go to, because in my patients, they would require 4 or 5 classes of antihypertensives by the time they are on dialysis. So, like a diabetic nephropathy with a stage 4 CKD, it will never be controlled with 1 or 2 drugs. No monotherapies work, right? Whereas somebody, who has just started his life as a stage 1 hypertension, even a monotherapy or an ARB with a small dose of diuretic will control it, right? So it also depends on what stage of hypertension we are talking at when we are introducing the drug.
And other thing is that commonly in India, somebody would have prescribed him a NSAID, which is also important, like Rushi added about the other drugs, NSAID, and look for occult hypothyroidism. Hypo is more common. Anemia, drug usage like NSAIDs. These are important where the patient's compliance, even if it is there, the patient's blood pressure is not controlled in these subsets. Yeah, Nitin, any other questions have been posted? Milan?
Sir, if control is not sufficient with this therapy, then can we add diuretic?
Yes. Actually, Dr. Kirit, we have only azilsartan with hydrochloric combination, which is available now. And now we are coming with azilsartan with cilidapine.
Correct.
So that's a great move by these people who are doing a good job. And only thing is, they have a triple of cilidapine with hydrochloric. I don't think they have got the DGSA.
Not yet.
Not yet. So
Not yet, no?
I know that. So you'll have to add a CTZ or a CTD along with the people who are not controlled with azilsartan and cilidapine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think Nitin, it's been a great discussion, and since I had to rush for some more talk, and Rishi is there to hold the fort, and nice hearing you, Rishi. And any other question we can take?
So, yeah.
Hello.
Sorry.
Milan bhai, I am audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
I am Dr. Devraj Dholaria from Surat. My question is to Dr. Kamath sir. Now, sir, at present time, the COVID-19 era, the persons who have already hypertension and is on the azilsartan drug, and later on he confirmed that he has a coronavirus infection, and any antibiotic, if we give for control of the COVID-19, are any drug interreactions can be possible?
Well, good question, Dr. Devraj. One most important is, there was a myth that if the patient is ACB or ARB should be stopped in this era. It is not true. We have many good trials at US and China have shown that, in fact, it is little more effective, rather being, even though there is acts to the AC enzyme expression also, but we need not stop that, first of all. And the only thing, do not, please, for God's sake, you HCQS and azithromycin, which can prolong the QT, and HCQS is not a drug at all, even for prophylaxis now. So do not give HCQS at all. If at all, you can use azithromycin for 5 days if there is any URTI.
सवाल क्यों कर रही है? मैं बोल रहा हूँ रहने दे, अभी कुछ खाना पीने को रहेगा मेरे को. वो बोलती है.
Okay, I think you have to mute other
Thank
people.
you.
Yes.
Thank you, Devraj.
I think, sir, there is one last question. Sir, I think it is directed to Dr. Rushi Deshpande. Is hypertension originates from kidney? If this, then what is the role of cilnidipine in that?
Well, that's like $1 million question. Does all hypertension originate from the kidney? Well, let Dr. Kalmat go. I'll answer that.
No, no, no. No, I'm not going. I'm listening.
Yeah. So, actually, you know what? When you look at all the pathophysiology, the theories that have been proponent for why does somebody get hypertension, right? From the theory that, you know, we were people who were starved of salt and now we have salt unlimited quantity, and how a lot of our hypertension is actually salt sensitive and salt reduction is important. To our kidney is not able to handle the salt excess that we are taking, and how that has led to hypertension. So yes, kidney does seem to be a central point, the mood point behind development of hypertension in individuals. That is one part. Now, when you say hypertension originates from the kidney, in a common language, it primarily means two things. That is a secondary hypertension of renal origin. When you say that, you are either talking renovascular hypertension or renal parenchymal hypertension. Renovascular, you are talking about, you know, either atherosclerotic renal artery stenosis or something like a fibromuscular dysplasia, which we would be referring to the cardiologist, you know, for a renal stenting. So, or you are talking about renal parenchymal disease like a glomerular nephritis or interstitial nephritis progressing to chronic kidney disease, where now you have hypertension related to salt and water accumulation. So, this question is quite broad based, so I don't know how to exactly answer that. But what is the role of cilnidipine? I mean, like we said in hypertension, it doesn't matter how you reach there as long as you reach there. Cilnidipine is excellent, particularly so the talk was not aimed at patients with glomerular nephritis or interstitial. It was talked at broad-based talk of hypertension in the community. The commonest cause of hypertension in the community comes to like metabolic syndrome, you know, the truncal obesity and that aging population, and that is where you see microalbuminuria, and then you need a drug which is not going to worsen your microalbuminuria. So if a patient has come to you for the first time, you have diagnosed hypertension, you have diagnosed that this is the essential hypertension, okay, and which is 90% or 80% of the population, whichever you want to say. And then this patient also has microalbuminuria. Now you would preferentially put the patient on something like cilnidipine and not amlodipine, because you don't want to worsen his proteinuria, right? So that is where the role comes in, because that word was very nice in the slides if you read it. Well balanced action of the L type and the N type receptors, where you are able to actually achieve the effect of BP control without concomitant renal injury from glomerular hyperfiltration.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think there are no more questions. So I'd like to conclude the session. So on behalf of JB Chemicals, I would like to thank our both eminent speaker, Dr. B.C. Kalmat and Dr. Rushi Deshpande,
Thank you.
who have taken out time from their busy schedule and participated in this knowledge sharing session. I also like to thank all the doctors who have attended in a working day, working hours, I would say. We had got almost 150 plus audience, I would say. Across from Mumbai and Gujarat, doctors have joined.
Very good gathering.
Yeah. So thank you, sir.
Nice.
So
very appreciative, and thank you so much to all the doctors who have come to attend this session. Thank you.
Thank you. I also thank them, everybody.
Yeah, at the outset, sir, I would like to thank all the doctor fraternity for their frontline work in this COVID crisis, this pandemic. So I request all of you to take care of yourself. We value your compassion, care, and sacrifice, and do take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Take care.